Okay, so the meeting will come to order at, I don't know, 7:00 something,
7:06.
7:06. And topic of the evening is the steps where you need to take to effect the just announced deep open space grants. So we need I guess the next step is purchase and sales agreement um, with the sellers. So we need to, I guess, get some approval for funds for that. Um, I guess is that what those of you recall is our next step. Or,
Yeah, I
Well,
think. Go ahead, Carol.
yeah, well, it seems to me that at this point, we did tell the CIP committee that the purchase would be contingent on getting a grant. So I guess we
right.
probably are, although I don't, but if we're going to go forward, it seems to me we should go in and ask for the full 60,000 from the open space fund that was in the CIP plan, because we already that did not include the money that was already appropriated for the appraisal, and that's off the table. But rather than go back piecemeal, I think it's important that we not just go in for this money, we go in for all of the monies. If they're not spent for any reason, um, or if we don't get a grant and there are things that we don't have to do, that money would just stay in the fund anyway. But I don't think we want to go in. First of all, we don't know exactly how much um, it would cost for the just the um, purchase and sales agreement. So I'm in favor. I'm not in favor of going piecemeal for those funds.
Okay. So we need, yeah. So the money would just stay there, I guess. Then, as you said, then if it were not appropriated or used. And yes, to your first point, I guess we should go in there with what we told CIP and Board of Finance that purchase going forward would be contingent on the grant. So I think we probably should hold to that. So besides purchase and sales, we'll need money for what? Survey,
Well,
Kathy?
here what Carol's trying to say is that, yeah, for purchase and sales, um, the survey and other legal fees too, if we have to do other things like a title search. And so I think what Carol's suggesting is, just to go in and ask the Board of Finance to recommend to the Board of Selectmen to call a town meeting to appropriate up to $60,000 from the open space fund.
Just 60,000. You don't have to say up to. You just say 60,000.
60.
Um,
$60,000 from the open space fund to be used for legal and for the survey and other legal costs associated with the purchase of the Talmadge property.
I would say for with costs associated with the purchase of the property,
So you wouldn't put anything
such as because you don't want to, if you say this, that, and the other specifically, you can say such as
Right.
legal fees, including legal fees, um,
survey and legal fees.
survey, and so, and there again, if we don't get, I guess we would, in this particular case, it probably makes sense not to go and ask for the money from the reserve fund for the whole package at this point, because
Right.
we're making it contingent upon the grant, and we might find ourselves in the future in a position of saying, well, we didn't get a grant, but do we still want to acquire this property? So maybe before we go to the town for a vote on the whole package, we should just, wait and see what happens with the grant. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It does to me.
Because
Yes.
if we, let's say we got a grant of, I don't know, $50,000, then we would only have to go to the town and ask for so much from the CIP plan.
Yeah, we would be at, what's in the CIP plan is 101 from the reserve and 60 from the open space. So basically we're saying we want to basically deplete the, pretty much deplete the open space fund, because if we used all 60,000, there'd be 750 some and change left over. But that's what we said we were willing to commit in the CIP plan. But I think because we can't anticipate exactly what's going to happen. It would be nice to be able to include a completed purchase and sales agreement in the grant application, because that would be a plus.
Right.
And I haven't,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
To refresh my memory, if we ask for a certain amount, the state can also give us less than we ask for, correct? Or is it all or nothing?
We don't ask for any particular amount, Marilyn. What they do is they look at the purchase price, and then they decide how much percent they're going to give to each of the applicants.
Right.
In the past, they've given us about 50%, but in the recent round of grants that just came out last year, they only gave them 30 to 40%. So we don't know how much they're going to give us, and so I don't think we can put anything in the purchase and sales agreement specific to that. But it could just be contingent, the purchase could be contingent upon receiving some type of grant.
And Kathy, the grants
let's say they give us the ability we're offered a grant. We can still decline it if the town isn't willing to step up with the amount of money that's left that needs to be paid, right?
Yes.
There's no penalty for that.
No, I mean, they might in the future be less inclined to give you a grant, but
right.
But yeah, there's no penalty.
And if that was a completed motion that you read, I know we didn't approve it. I would like you to send that to me, the final motion that you made.
Okay, let me restate it for the meeting, and then I'll send it to you. Is that okay? And make sure that everybody's in agreement with the wording.
Kathy,
yeah.
A point of information, the grants are based on a percentage of the sale price itself and not for any other costs, right? So it would be a percentage of the purchase of the land itself. It would not include the other associated costs.
Okay.
So that's where we came up with an estimate of a maximum grant would be about 60,000 based upon the anticipated sale price.
Right. And so, I mean, the amount that DEEP gives, the percent that they give is based on the appraised price, not necessarily the sales price. So we're basically going to be purchasing this for the appraised price. So there's really not any concern there. Yeah. So I'm going to move that the Conservation Commission requests that the Board of Finance recommends to the Board of Selectmen to call a town meeting to approve an appropriation of $60,000 from the Open Space Fund for the purchase of the Talmadge property and associated costs, including survey and legal fees.
Or do you want to say
Go ahead.
You said the purchase and we don't want to limit this to just the legal fees at this point, because some could be you're being used for the purchase then.
So for a cost associated with the purchase, would that be better? So approve an appropriation of $60,000 from the Open Space Fund to be used for costs associated with the purchase of the Talmadge property, including survey and legal fees. Is that better?
I think it sounds better.
Carol, do you have a thought?
No, I think, yeah, because we budgeted, let me think. I'm looking at this. We put our budget, our estimate of project cost to the town was 125,000 for site acquisition. That was based upon the asking price at the time, and approximately 36,000. So yes, we would want part of it to go toward the purchase price. And we were estimating possibility of a state grant as much as 50%, but everybody understand, at least the CIP and Board of Finance and Selectmen, everybody understands that is not a guaranteed amount, that it could be a lot less than that. And they know that the recent grants awards were less than 50%. But yes, which should be, in order for the math to work out right, we've got to have a possibility of applying it toward the purchase price as well, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, I guess that would make sense, yeah. So is that kind of in there with what we've said, the last rephrasing there?
To be
Could that be
used for cost associated with the purchase of the Talmadge property, including survey and legal fees. So costs associated with the purchase, that means also the land, I would mean, I think.
I would think so.
Yeah, and actually, when you can go, before they, when you go to the Board of Finance or before they decide on the call of the town meeting, that wording can be fine-tuned to make sure that it covers everything that's going to be needed in funds over and above the 60,000, because the 60,000 is just part of the, we're projecting total costs of 161. They're covering it in the CIP by 101 from the reserve fund, which means that that would in fact include a 25,000 of the purchase price,
Uh-huh.
right? And
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, just
Right.
that's
That was the assumption, right?
yeah.
But if we don't get any grant, let's just say, they say, sorry, we're not going to give you any money. It does allow for the purchase to go forward if the town would agree to use $101,000
Mhm.
Right, that would be
from the reserve.
yeah, that would be a bridge to cross at that point, just to see if it's.
Right. But
Right.
if you, and depending on how you write the purchase and sales agreement, if you say it's contingent upon a grant, then it allows you to bail if you want to do
Right.
that.
Right. Yeah, the purchase and sales, yeah, I was looking at the, the Knowlton purchase and sales. What does it say here?
Yeah, that was contingent upon getting a grant of $250,000 because it was such a large amount.
Right.
The town couldn't afford the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for the Talmadge, the original Talmadge property, we did not put any specific amount in the purchase and sales. We just said contingent upon a grant from DEEP. It didn't say how much.
Right.
So if we didn't receive a grant, then an option might remain, if the family is still interested in selling to us, to go back to the town and say, okay, is this an important enough, do you feel strongly enough about this that the town could pay for the full freight to acquire this property?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what they did in the CIP is they actually assumed that could happen. I mean, they gave us up to $101,000 in the CIP. So they were not making it contingent upon the grant.
Yeah, but they're expecting us to apply for a grant.
Yes, but I'm just saying that they could have only put so much, they could put less in there. and
Yeah.
said, you have to get at least this much from a grant. And I'm just saying they didn't.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
in this particular environment, it's very difficult to know. And there's so many social forces. If you look at the comments that they got and some of the impact that they want things to be within uh, close enough to public transportation that people can get there. They want accessibility, and there are all kinds of issues. They want, how does this address climate change? So there are a lot of issues that will affect how they rank applications that might be somewhat different from what they've been in the last times we applied.
well, you know, the other thing is they're only giving people 4 months to complete this. Now, if we had to go out and get our appraisals now, we would be in a world of hurt, you know, waiting on all that. So we're ahead of the game. I don't know how many other applicants have done any of the work that we've done. But 4 months was not the typical amount they used to give. So I think we're probably ahead of some people in terms of being able to complete it. And there may be other grantees from last year that said, I only got 30%. I'm not doing this again. So I just don't know, you know, how many people will apply. It'll be interesting to see what
Yeah,
and then the scoring sheet is not available yet. I asked Allison today, and she said they're still working on that part of it because they had to redo the application. So, you know, we'll see. I think it will score probably in the middle somewhere. It's not a large forest or core forest. It's not right on the river, but it has a lot of attributes, even as a small parcel. And we're connecting it to the 2 other parcels. We have the parking lot, we have the trails, we have, you know, the watershed. There is a small stream on the property that we can say, you know, that goes down to the Fenton River. So there's a lot of, and it's over the aquifer. So there's a lot of positive attributes for this parcel. So I'm quite sure we'll get some money, you know.
Yeah, you would hope. One of the requirements now is if you've gotten previous grants, you have to send the pictures of your sign that shows that we put up a sign saying thank you for the money that you gave us, and we can do that, which it'd be interesting to see. Then the question is, if we get grant money, do we have to do another Daniel Talmadge sign that says we got grant money, or can we just say that this would be, as part of the application process, say that this would be added to the Daniel C. Talmadge, and that maybe that's something that should go in the purchase and sales agreement also, that the property would be acquired as an addition to the Daniel Talmadge, the existing Daniel Talmadge tract, and that would clarify things both for the family and for the state and all of that. So
Yeah.
You could always add a small add-on to the sign.
yeah, we could put on additional funds received.
Right. Just have another line. Yeah. I think we would make sure that we did that properly.
Yeah, oh, yeah, but at
well,
least
we hung an addition on the Knowlton sign, didn't we, for Joshua's Trust?
Yeah.
We added an extra board to it.
Yeah.
Then it was Joshua's and CFPA both gave us money, and they were both
Right.
acknowledged as well. But you know, it's
We do have a motion on the table, though.
Yeah, let's roll along with that.
Shall I read it one more time?
Go ahead.
Sure.
Okay. Conservation Commission requests that the Board of Finance recommends to the Board of Selectmen to call a town meeting to approve an appropriation of $60,000 from the Open Space Fund to be used for costs associated with the purchase of the Talmadge property, including survey and legal fees.
yeah, maybe we should say mention Talmadge property on Mason Road, including such expenses as including legal fees.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, we put in the identifier there on Mason Road. Yes.
Including, okay, on Mason Road. Okay. Do you want me to put 16 acres? Or
Yeah.
just leave it Talmadge property on Mason?
I
Yeah,
think you
just-
should, because there could be people who say, well, didn't you already buy the, how much, it would just, it would take away any suggestion of confusion for anybody, that it's an additional it's added acreage to the same, adjacent to, but if you just put the acreage in, it would be clear.
Yeah, but I think in this, the Board of Finance motion, it would not be appropriate just to say to be added to the other tract
No.
without discussing that with the family first and
No,
getting that nailed down. So just
Right.
say, yeah, for the costs associated with the purchase of
The townage property
property.
on
on
Mason
Mason
Road,
Road, including survey and legal fees.
yes,
Okay,
okay.
is there a second?
Who made the motion? Is it
Kathy,
Carol?
Kathy.
Kathy
Kathy.
made the motion, all right. I'll second. Okay, any discussion, further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, good. So that's next, what, Thursday
the
night
third-
that they're gonna meet?
Right, Thursday after our meeting. So I guess you'll have to get in touch with them to get on their agenda. Are you
Sure.
going to be around that evening or are you on your way to Maine?
Not yet, not till next week.
What, the week after next week?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Do you know when the town hall, do you know when they're gonna return to being open? I know a lot of the town halls are. Does anyone know the date where meetings will go back to being at the building?
I think it's in July. I think I had read something in the Board of Selectmen minutes, but I can't tell you the exact date.
I
Marilyn.
know Ashford is opening in July, Mansfield's opening, they could already be open, but if they're not, it's right around the corner.
Yeah, I think there's something from the state, some advice or guidance from the state that they probably are all going by, maybe.
Yeah.
So Pete, you'll be able to get, to contact them and get on
Yep.
their agenda?
Yep.
Okay. And
at
then
least
how
we're a
about,
week ahead of their meeting. If we do it right away, we're a week ahead of their meeting instead of the day before. And on the matter of this consequence, it's probably a good idea to give them advance notices. And
Sure, yeah.
so then
I
that,
will not be available.
okay. I can be available via Zoom, so,
Now, I'm not sure where we're staying, whether there will be Wi-Fi, but whether it will be in the separate building that or the separate cabin that we'll be in, I don't know. And doing
You
it
hope
with
you
my
hope-
grandchildren
you hope-
running around
I
is not
know.
feasible.
I know, you hope there isn't any.
Well, our granddaughter decided to make life interesting by swallowing 2 pennies today. So Kathy sent us the X-ray that shows that there is at least 1 penny has got as far as as her stomach, and shouldn't be any problem. But when she's sticking by her story that she swallowed 2, so who knows?
I got her 2 cents worth, yeah. I have a joke
She
about
did.
that. I have a joke about swallowing pennies, but another time. All right, next, what do we need to work on now?
so that's
So we
gonna
can't-
get
we
us,
can't
that's gonna
really-
that's
we
gonna get us
can't
some
Get
money.
rolling on the purchase and sales until we know we've got money for it, right?
Well, I think you could go ahead and tell the sellers, well, I guess you could wait until,
Well-
you can let them know that the grant's been announced and we're moving forward with the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen to get some money to pay for the purchase and sales, or our portion of it anyway. You could let them know that at least.
Yep,
They've been
sure.
waiting patiently since November. That was the last time really that we had sent them a letter anyway.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So then the next thing to do would be to work on the purchase and sales agreement once we get the funding. And so that's where it might get a little bit more tricky in terms of working with the attorney. I don't know if the best thing to do is to talk to Erica and see, because in this era of COVID, that's the other thing. I don't know how we're going to do that. But if they're just going to try to take the old one that we had with Talmadge,
Mhm.
do we need to make any remarks about that perhaps and say, we want this kept in, we want that added? You were talking about, Carol, the adding the land, it would be an addition. If you want to write something up to that effect, perhaps we can submit that to the attorneys too.
I think what the important thing is that the attorney knows um, what it is we want in there, the contingency upon a state grant. And we could just discuss with the family whether we want to put it. Are we in agreement that we would want to add it to the existing Daniel Talmadge tract and recommend that to the family? If the family agrees with that, then that probably could be incorporated into the purchase and sales. But basically, the attorney needs to know the key information that both parties want in the agreement. And then they'll translate it into the appropriate legal language. So I think those are the key points, really.
Well, like I said, I'm going to be spending a fair amount of time in Vermont, and my ability to connect with people, such as attorneys and stuff, is a little bit more going to be challenged. So I don't know if that's something maybe you may be willing to work on, because you're more local. If you had to go and speak to Erica or, contact her, those kinds of things, that would be great.
I'm not sure how much direct contact with the members of the Conservation Commission actually had with the attorney. Once you determine that you want an agreement, you want the price would be included.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be price, dependent about contingent upon the grant, and possibly also a reference to its being added to the existing Daniel C. Talmadge tract. Can anybody think of anything else that should go in there? And we can be in email correspondence about that, but I'm thinking that it's those key points, and we'd have to work through the selectmen with the town attorney. And do you know what? I don't remember the process before, whether it started with the town attorney or or just general terms of agreement on what should go in the document.
Well, just because we're the ones that have some contingencies, I think maybe starting with what we've already used in the past might be helpful, because it's so similar to the original Talmadge purchase.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some new clauses they may add in, because the Knowlton's a little more extensive, but some of it had to do with the fact that there were multiple sellers.
Right.
And also the grant, how much for the grant that we had to get. One of the things that I looked at both of the past sales agreements, under the item called closing, it says the closing shall take place within 14 days of buyer's receipt of approval of buyer's application from the DEEP grant. There's no way we could close in 14 days of getting a letter.
And what happened, I do know as town treasurer, that what happened was that you can't close until the town actually receives a check from the state of Connecticut, because like any other closing, the full purchase price has to be delivered with the usual adjustment for taxes and all that kind of stuff. And there the town, I'm sure, would require a title search. We should have one. There's also already been a title search, but then we probably but on the other parcel, the other piece of land, which is basically,
Well,
depends on whether the original title search might have covered the whole Talmadge piece, without the 28 acres.
Yeah, but it'd have to be redone because you don't know if there's a lien on the current parcel.
Yeah,
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 I
yeah,
think you
you're
just
right.
have to start from scratch.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
but yeah, that's gonna be, I don't know, I'm sure we didn't close within 14 days of either of those deep approvals, in the past. I don't remember all the specifics, but that language might have to change a little bit in the grant, the purchase and sales agreement.
Yeah, because I'm sure the state's not gonna hand over money until there's been a satisfactory resolution of any issues raised by a title search. And then, and would require the A2 survey and all of that. So that whole process takes time, and they just don't sit down and write a check and say, here, we gave you a grant, now here, we'll give you the money, you go out and buy the property. It doesn't quite work that way.
Well, the other thing too, the purchase and sales agreement says that the closing would be held within 1 year of the signing of the purchase and sales. That's not going to happen either, because we'll be lucky, honestly, because I asked Allison again, I said, when are we going to hear about this grant? I said, we have to get it in by September 31st. I said, when next year are they going to be giving the awards? Are they going to be, and she was like, well, maybe, in summer. I was like, wow, it could be a year just to hear if we're getting a grant. So I'm not sure.
That seems very late, Kathy. What's the normal schedule when the applications used to be due in May?
Well, remember last year the application was due in May and they didn't make any announcements until February.
Their ranks have been decimated. They don't have the staffing that they used to have.
Yeah. I think they're really, there's been a lot of issues with administration. There's a lot of fingers in the pie over there right now. And it just seems like everything gets really slowed down. Look at how long it took them to get out the new grant application.
Yeah.
So anyway, what I'm trying to say is it's possible we won't hear about if we received a grant until the summer. So it'd be almost a year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Kathy. Yeah, I would like you to get me the contact information for the person that you deal with at DEP.
I'd be happy to, Carol.
Yeah, just so we could tie down some of these things, and they would probably be familiar with what kinds of things go into a purchase and sales agreement in terms of timing. I think it ought to be tied not to when the grant award is announced. I don't know, when we find out that we're going to get a grant, that would be the date to start a clock ticking, I would think.
No, I agree with you. That's why I'm saying there's some things in the past purchase and sales agreement that should be rewritten in a different way.
Yeah, and I'm sure we could contact, we could go back and forth with email or telephone calls or whatever, and I could be the one to sit down with
Allison. Is that what you're saying from the?
Well, whatever. I mean.
Well, I'm telling you, she's the one in charge. She's the contact person, and everything's very vague. And she doesn't really know. It's not in her hands. And she knows that this is rough for people that are applying, but she can't do much about it. I'm just explaining to you, what she's telling me. So I'm texting her and she's texting back. So I have it in writing.
Kathy, and that in the previous agreement, it said so many days, so much time frame after the awarding of the grant.
That was in the Talmadge one. Now you've got copies of both.
I think I've got copies.
Right?
I think I have copies of both.
Yeah.
It didn't seem worth spending a lot of time on them until they finally got around to announcing that they were actually going to have people the opportunity to apply for grant. And that didn't happen until last week. So.
Yeah, well, I'm just telling you what the past ones have said. So they may have to be tweaked because I think the schedule that the grant process is on right now is more delayed than in the past.
Yeah.
So. But if you would be willing to work on maybe coming up with those specific points that should be addressed in the purchase and sales, and be willing to work with the board, with the first selectman and or the attorney, at least to get those started, that would be very helpful. I don't mind starting to write the grant, doing the narrative part of it.
Yeah.
Now that we have
I
the
could work on
application.
some of that too. The other thing is who's going to talk with the town, with the executors of the Talmadge estate. And I think in this matter, if you're talking about legal stuff, we ought to start with the people who are named executors, but they might possibly refer them to their lawyer, who is
Yeah,
also a
right.
family member. And so we need to be, would need to be at least in contact with them, saying these are points we'd like to see in the purchase and sales agreement. But we're basically dealing with an entity, the estate of, as represented by the two people who are executors, and and whoever they designate for us to deal with in legal matters, and that. But I don't know that since I wasn't involved directly in negotiations with the family, then I would need to somebody else to at least set up initial contact. So because if I were doing this kind of stuff that you suggest regarding a purchase and sales agreement, then I would need to be able to have some dialogue probably with the other party, to see if this would be.
Well, I wonder if our town attorney would be doing some of that. We apprise the town attorney of the points that we want in there. And at some point, I'm sure he's going to have to consult with their attorney.
Right. But I'm thinking also that if it's this is where we start getting serious about this whole thing about if we both parties are serious, and both parties can agree on key points that are relevant to the final agreement. And so I think there has to be some initial discussion with the family or its representatives or its legal representation on whether some of the points that we've raised tonight are things that they would also like to see in a sales agreement to make it acceptable to them.
Well, I'll inform them where we are, as I said, and I can put these three things that we mentioned there in the letter initially, and say these are things that we would like to see incorporated in some form in any purchase and sales agreement.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
do we know for sure who's their attorney? Is it going to be Dennis?
They've used Dennis Poitras in the past.
That's the last we've heard anyway. So, I mean, but then, if they have something else to say.
Yeah, and the executors are Kathleen and no, his name escapes me.
My folders, I don't have my
one
folder.
whose wife deferred to him, the one who's the CPA in Willimantic.
Yeah, right.
At the moment.
Yep.
But
anyway,
I think that an initial contact, and if you guys are going to be away and you wanted to give them my contact information for, and I would, of course, be in touch with anybody who wants to be involved in this, and like to probably see a draft of a letter that goes to the family.
Sure. Yeah.
Just.
Sure. Okay, are we good on somewhat of light on the way forward at this point on the issue on the agenda?
Yeah. Like I said, I can look through the scope of work, if you will, in terms of the grant, the narrative, and all the things that we have to include, and come up with kind of a list of things, and then maybe send it out. And like I said, because I've got so much of this on the computer, I can cut and paste a lot of stuff. So
that'd be great. Yeah, because a lot of the narrative will be the same because it's adjacent to the other parcels, or and some of the same selling points, if you will, apply that apply to the other two properties. So maybe that would be good for you to work on.
Ultimately, you have to submit this grant digitally, so we're not going to be printing anything out and running to Hartford this time, Carol. You'll be
Oh,
happy to know.
thank you. It was the Knowlton one that I was sitting in the lawyer's office waiting for the electronic signatures to come in from all of the
Purchasing.
parties to that one, and I got it to the DEP, which fortunately was right near the lawyer's office with 15 minutes to spare. So
Well, that's the
Yeah,
thing. I mean,
no,
go ahead, Pete.
I was just going to throw in that yes, the Pony Express's time has come and gone.
although Jackie said one of the other farmers has the invoice for the publicity for the farm tour, and what if she can't scan it? And I said, well, there's the good old fashioned snail mail. She could put it in an envelope and mail it to my home address. That would work too.
Let's saddle up the tractor and roll on down the road.
Well, the other thing is, I don't know how long it's going to take to get this purchase and sales agreement finalized, but remember, we only have 4 months. The clock is ticking. So we will have to start to move, quickly. And I don't know if a lot of these attorneys are, there's so many other land sales or home sales right now. A lot of these offices are, they've got a lot on their plate. So we just need to let them know there's a timeline here too.
Yeah, right. Okay, then. All right, on the Talmadge at this point.
Does anybody have any thoughts on when we should take it to the town? Would it be before the grant application is in, to see if we would get town meeting support, or do we just want to rely on the fact that there's a plan in CIP which is not binding, but which is which has been approved by the town as an indication that there is support from town leadership at least for the purchase? So that's something else to think about.
Well, if we're going to do that, it would make sense to do it before the grant application is due, or just wait. One or the other, because I don't think it'll matter after the application's in.
Yep.
We'll still have to do the survey once we get the grant, right? Because that's what we've done before. We don't do the survey until we get the grant. We hear that we've been approved for the grant, I should say. We do the survey and then we send that in. So there's still time then to ask the townspeople to move forward with the money in the CIP. Or we can.
No, I think actually before we can, well, the purchase and sales agreement would be, and actually there may be, in this case, with Knowlton, I believe, we had already been to town meeting saying that we were going to apply. It would be contingent upon receiving a grant of at least X dollars. But that was approved by the town, I believe, in advance of the sale. We don't have anything binding from the townspeople at this point, as we did with that. So that's something to consider as well.
Well, if we're
I remember going to the town meeting up at the town hall and standing up and selling the proposal, but I don't remember at what stage of the game it was. After the grant or before.
I'll do some research on the town meeting stuff and how the dates and what the timeline was for both of the previous things before we move forward too much. But because the CIP is only a plan, and the implementation of that is dependent upon getting town meeting approval, not only for the money from the open space fund, but the money from the reserve fund at my town meeting. Right. And so I'll work on looking up some timeline stuff, issues, and Kathy, you and I can be in communication when and about who to contact and when and where and whatever.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
we're going-
I had other on the menu there too, but we can't do too much at this point.
I think that's a little too open-ended for a special
Yes.
meeting. Pete, I think you have to
Yes.
be specific on your,
Unless it ties into this somehow.
yeah.
So,
I will do some research when I get back from, well, in, maybe not till early July. I can do some research on the whole town meeting, the process on the 2 previous grants and when we went to the town for approval and that kind of thing.
okay,
So
good,
we
yeah,
can think about that.
all right.
Because
So-
if we're gonna do that, then we're talking about doing that before September 31st, you're talking
30th.
30th, okay. So you're talking about doing that before the grant is due so that we could put that information in the grant.
Yeah, and that's why I want to look at the timelines on what we did.
See what we did,
And particularly if we're making it contingent upon the state, on the grant, that it would make sense, it might make sense to go to town meeting to get the approval based on that contingency.
Sure, yeah.
But I will, Kathy, I'll be in give me,
Yeah,
Yeah,
whether
go
the
ahead.
powers
I need a
that be,
week off, let's put it this way.
Be sure, Carol, when you contact me, be sure to use the K Demers email because when I'm away, I don't get the C Demers one.
The K Demers is the
48,
Gmail.
48, okay,
yeah, the Gmail, thank
email, yeah, okay.
you. Okay.
All right, should we still have a meeting next week?
I always use both, but I always using both, yeah.
Well, are there a couple other things we need to talk about? You had some contact with somebody?
I
Contact.
did, and, just reports on conditions of things and the park day and little stuff like that. Maybe have a quick meeting,
Yeah,
wrap up for the summer, see if there's projects that need doing over the summer or anyone could tackle.
okay.
So, all right, so we'll go ahead with the meeting next week.
All right, on Wednesday.
Okay, so I guess we'll draw the meeting to a close. Your question, yes?
I just have a question. Marilyn, are you available next Wednesday for the meeting? I just want to make sure we're going to have a quorum because Carol's probably going to be away.
hang on 1 minute.
Yeah, I really don't think I can guarantee that that I'll be able to have reliable access.
Okay. Because we've not had particularly good showing in the
So-
last,
I'm here.
you're
I'll
around
be
here?
here on the 16th, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Marilyn. All right.
Okay, all right, so we'll adjourn the special meeting at whatever time it is. 7:54. So I will stop the recording then.